Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Yes, it's a show about what we need to start thinking about. And today, on this episode, we are going to be thinking about illicit fentanyl. Yes, we hear it in the news. We probably have encountered somebody close to us who has dealt with this, and it's time for us to really think about this because it's getting kind of out of hand. Let's be honest, it's out of hand. So I got Brian here on my show so that we can really think about this in another way. So let's dive right into it, Brian. When you hear the words illicit fentanyl, what does that make you think about?
All the people that it's killed, yeah, especially in the last few years. We lose we lose one person about every 5 minutes because of drugs in this country.
Yeah.
So that means 12 or 13 people every hour, and we know about 75% of those people are because of illicit fentanyl. It is an absolute game changer. I spent 28 years in law enforcement, and I've never seen a drug more impactful.
Mm, that says a lot. I mean, because for 28 years, you could be focusing on meth, you could be focusing on cocaine, you could be focusing on marijuana, you could be focusing on so many drugs out there. And then here comes fentanyl. That's like, excuse me. Would you consider fentanyl a lot worse than when Molly and bath salts came in?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the problem with fentanyl is it's tasteless, it's odorless, and it infiltrated our drug supply unbeknownst to many people. So it originally came through heroin, and so you had heroin users who had no idea they were getting fentanyl and dying um, because they were getting a drug that was much more potent, much more powerful. Only 2 milligrams is considered a lethal dose. That's a couple granules of salt or sand. So yeah, absolutely. This drug is dangerous, and we should be aware of it. Most who are using fentanyl, think they're using heroin or think they're getting a pill, whether it's an opioid or a non-opioid. It is throughout our drug supply.
Yeah, I think that's kind of crazy how just a little bit, just very little bit can trigger our nervous system, our whole entire anatomy in such a way that people just barely even grasping onto it have passed out and, have literally gone into comas because of this and actually died because of the body system just cannot handle what was going on to them. I've my husband's cousin actually died from fentanyl, and his father is a big advocate for this, and I applaud him for this. And he does it out here in Milwaukee, and he is really big on speaking about this. And that's why when you reached out and you wanted to talk about this, I was like, yeah, how can we not talk about this? This is going on in almost every city. There's a mother and father in pain knowing that their child is no longer with them because somebody decided to be a chemist without actually knowing real chemistry. And now I'm messing up people's lives. So I guess my question to you is next is what are the biggest misconceptions when it comes to fentanyl?
I think people don't realize that it's just in our drug supply. I said, they're ordering cocaine. 40% of all cocaine submissions by law enforcement in 2023 contain fentanyl. Methamphetamine. 17% of all law enforcement submissions of methamphetamine to the drug labs contain fentanyl.
Hmm.
Heroin, if you can find anymore in the US, about 70, almost 75% of it contains fentanyl. So I think that's the big misconception is I think people think they're people are looking for fentanyl or seeking this drug. And of course, there are people who develop a substance use disorder to fentanyl, but often it's how it kills people in the drugs that they're not looking for fentanyl in, like the methamphetamine, like the
Mm,
cocaine, like heroin, like all the pills. You have kids that are, going online and, they're getting Adderall or Xanax bars and not that, we should be encouraging that type of behavior, but they're looking for one drug and they're getting another drug. They're getting fentanyl and it's
exactly.
killing people at alarming rates. And like I said, most of the time, unbeknownst to the user who want fentanyl.
What do you think, in your opinion, is a good way to handle this? What is a good way to start tackling this epidemic that's going on when it comes to fentanyl.
We need to reduce demand. The demand in this country is quite frankly unlike any other in the entire world. We have a we have a belief from a young age, and this is how we've been taught, that there is a pill for everything. You know, that
Yeah.
they're go to the doctor, she is going to give you some medicine, and that's going to make you all better. And you look at the numbers of legal prescription rates, opioid rates, and just things like that. It's just increased tenfold. We have to reduce demand. You know, I talk when I do presentations and training, I talk about the cartels and I talk about the all the soulless traffickers out there. But at the end of the day, those people wouldn't exist if we didn't have such an appetite for this stuff. You know, in the height of the opioid crisis first, not going to say height, but when it first was recognized by our government, which was 2013, it's estimated that about 80% of all oxycodone use was in North America, 99% of all hydrocodone use in North America. Why? Why is our appetite for drugs so different than any other country in the world? Why do we treat pain differently than any other country in the world?
That's true.
I mean, in 2019, USC did a study where they looked at just high income nations, Australia, Germany, France, England, high income nations. And in the United States, your chances of dying from drugs, 3.5 times greater than any of those countries. The two lowest in the world, Italy and Japan. Your chances of dying from drugs in the United States, 27 times greater than those two countries. Why? Because our
Wow.
demand is incredible. We need to reduce demand. We need to get to kids at early ages, and we need to inform them of the dangers of drugs, especially fentanyl. Like I said, when they're experimenting with drugs, and they're getting a very powerful drug that'll kill them the first time they use it, and that's happening. Well,
Yeah.
one time is too much in my opinion, but it's happening too much.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, yeah, your statement one time is way too much. I mean, at the end of the day, somebody shouldn't be on a billboard when representing a drug about what the consequences are. You know what I mean? Our children shouldn't be on these billboards representing what it can do to you. You know what I mean? It should be talked about more. It should be represented more so that children can actually have the understanding to know that this is not good for your whole well-being. The point is for you to live a long life, to grow old gracefully, not to harm yourself at such a young age, or being tricked by somebody else, that peer pressure, because peer pressure is still real, especially when you're young. And it's a real thing that children, especially the youth, just need to think about when it comes to drugs. It's not about associating it to being cool or to being part of a crowd or to being a community to be accepted. It's to be honest, it's a filler that people have used to bottle up so much inside them that they've made it seem acceptable. You know what I mean? They made it seem normal. So people think, oh, if I'm going a hard time or if I'm stressing, maybe I need to go to that bottle or maybe I need to go to that drug, whatever it is. Because, like you said, fentanyl's on anything now, just a little sprinkle, sprinkle, and there you go. It's already contaminated. So it's really interesting to think about because I've done research on other countries as well, and I've noticed that Portugal actually made it legal for a majority of those illicit drugs like marijuana, cocaine, meth, heroin to be legalized. And they've actually noticed a reduction on their overdose, reduction on their teens feeling the need to use it because they're like, well, it's acceptable. So why are we going to dabble into something that's acceptable or already approved? Like they have no interest into seeking that adrenaline of knowing what could possibly be. And the rehabs have gone down drastically because I mean, there's been such a change, and it's interesting to think if it worked for one country, maybe it could work for another, or maybe it could be totally opposite. You never really know where it's going to go. And that's the scary part of the trying something like that. I mean, what is your opinions on that?
I think it's difficult to compare us to other countries. I understand that we want to, if something's working there, then why wouldn't we want to model that, right? But I think our situation is pretty unique. I really do. When you look at the drug use and the culture in this country, the acceptance drugs, and not just illicit substances, but legal like drugs. Like I said, just prescriptions. I mean, look at the number of legal opioids. We have 39.5 legal opioid prescriptions per 100 people in this country. Per 100 people, 39.5 per 100 people. I mean, I can't repeat that enough. I mean, that alone is so different than any other country in the world. So I think the first part of that answer is it's difficult to compare us when our problem is truly a little bit more unique. And then when we start to dive into some of the more progressive and harm reduction type laws in this country, we haven't had a lot of success. I mean, look at Oregon. I mean, they actually increased the number of people that were going to those areas and using the drugs. And now the state has actually kind of gone the other way on
That's true. That's a
on
good
whether or
point.
not Canada is another country. Our neighbors to the north, very progressive drug laws, and now they're looking at ways to curb some of that because they're seeing an increase in drug related crime. They're seeing an increase in overdoses. They're seeing increases that are concerning. So, but again, in the same token, it's still not fair, I think, to compare them. I think we need to figure out how to reduce our demand in this country and really focus on that. In addition to, are there some harm reduction strategies, or are there some laws that we need to reform or
Yeah.
have discussions about? I'm not opposed to that. I don't know that just legalization is really going to help us. I know there are kids out there who, like you said, you take away the lure, the sexiness of something, and maybe they won't do it. But
It
I
doesn't
didn't.
always work. Yeah.
It
It
doesn't
doesn't
always
always
work,
work.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
I can tell you, I've met a lot of kids who respect the rules, and they won't do those things because they
Yeah.
are, and that actually happens a lot more than we think. Like
That's very true. That's a good point to mention because people don't really think about that. And I think you brought up a lot of good points that there are countries that are already trying to reconstruct their laws because it's been so open and they're seeing the effects from it. So, yeah, that's a very good point, because people need to have that 360 perspective when it comes to this type of topic because yeah, Portugal's a very small country compared to our grandness of what we are in the United States, and Canada is so big as well. I mean, you can't really compare giants to something so small. So, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. It's just about thinking about what will work for you and your dynamic and how to advocate for this in your area. Because if you talk about it in your area, you don't know who that might trigger to be like, okay, I won't do this, or I need to talk to my children about this, or I need to talk to somebody else about this that you may not even have contact with. So I just having that open communication about this topic, I think just needs to continue so that we can really get the grand masses to really start thinking about this in a different way. So I really do appreciate that perspective because, you know, we could only look at something it's in one direction for so long. You know what I mean? We really can't just look in that one direction for so long. But I'm curious. I have a quote because I love quotes and I would love your intake on it. The quote goes, drugs take you to hell disguised as heaven. What
wow,
are your thoughts on that?
yeah, it's a powerful quote, and I think there's a lot of folks out there that would absolutely agree with that quote. I've had a lot of folks, a lot of friends now that are in long-term recovery that'll tell you that the drugs just absolutely destroyed their lives, and they were, they thought they were
Yeah.
going to heaven, but they certainly weren't. I love that quote. I think, excuse me, I'm gonna have to steal that one.
It's okay. You can have it. I mean, anyone can have it and take it and share it, because that's the beauty of quotes. It makes you realize
Mhm.
the situation from a different perspective as well. You know what I mean? Because drugs in general, you know what I mean? Let's be honest, drugs in general, because like you said, fentanyl can be sprinkled in or be part of a contributed, mixed in any type of way that you can't really tell sometimes. Some people be like, oh, I'm an expert, I can tell. To a degree. You know what I mean? To a degree. What is your opinions on that?
it- Difficult to there's no way you can look at a pill and tell whether or not it has it. Like I said, tasteless, odorless. You can't even tell if it's counterfeit anymore. One of the things I do is I show real pills and counterfeit pills. Say, hey, especially with students, I have them raise their hand. I say, what side of my screen is the real pill and what side's the fake pill, and no one's ever getting them all right. It's just, it's a deadly game. It's crazy. And back to that quote, one more comment I want to make is I can't tell how many folks I've had talked to who've suffered from substance use disorder, what we call quote unquote addiction in this country.
Yeah.
Well, we'll tell you that this has altered their lives forever. And they thought they were chasing something good, or that euphoric feeling, or maybe they were escaping some traumatic experience or some type of mental health condition, and it took over their lives in a very negative, profound way. Um,
It
so yeah,
does.
I'm going back to the quote, but it is powerful.
It is because people don't realize like these chemicals that we're putting into our bodies altering our network, our whole entire anatomy. And
Yeah,
we are made to be a certain way. We are made to function a certain operation. We are human beings. We are not we are not an animal. You know what I mean? And we are not like a lion. We are not a dog. We are human beings. That's what separates us. So because we are human beings, we have to remember that we have to take care of ourselves and
yeah.
everything that's going on within us. If we care so much about a horse, to create animal protective rights laws on for animals going forward, then why can't we protect ourselves and what we put in ourselves and what we do with ourselves, and that's a big impact that people don't realize. Like we this is only happening once. You know what I mean? There's only one Mitzi in this time. There's only one Brian in this time. There's no duplicates. You can try to clone me, but at the end of the day, it won't work because we're original as we are. And I think that's something that people forget.
Yeah, it is, and it's interesting is our brain is actually designed to try to protect us from those substances because it is that this one life that we get, and that's why substance use disorder even exists, is because our brain isn't meant to have all these chemicals in it. So when you introduce these chemicals, yeah, you get that euphoric feeling originally, but ultimately you start building a tolerance. What is a tolerance? A tolerance is your brain saying, trying to block all those things you're putting into it, and now you need more of it. That's the tolerance part, to get the same effect that you got the first or second time you used the drug, and then ultimately your brain starts making changes where it says, hey, I guess this is normal. I guess this chemical, this drug is something I need to put my jeans on in the morning.
Mhm.
And again, that goes back to our brain wasn't designed to do that. That's why it's trying to protect you. And especially our young people, we know now that brain development is happening into our mid 20s. So
Yeah.
now we have kids introducing drugs and alcohol into their brain ages, even the just weed, and it's having a huge impact on brain development. And that's going to carry with us for the rest of our lives. And it's just not worth it.
It's
That's
not. It's not
difference in
because
life.
it sucks because when I've spoken to adults who back then in their younger days started drinking, smoking, at a very young age, like 14, 15 years old. Now they're like 60s, 50s, 40s, and they're just like, if I had somebody to actually tell me not to do it versus just allow me to live my own life, I think it would have changed who I am as a person. You know what I mean? And it's interesting because there's a lot of adults who will advocate and just allow the child to do certain things just because, oh, the old saying, they'll figure it out themselves. But as adults, as parents, because I'm a parent now, I can say I wish I wish more parents would step up. You know what I mean? I wish more adults would step up, and if that's not your child, they are young, see them as a child at the end of the see them as maybe that could be your child, and have some compassion, knowing that maybe they need some direction, some help, some guidance. Tell them they shouldn't be smoking. Tell them they shouldn't be drinking. Speak up because maybe they don't have that person in their life. And like you said, some people, some children do so much better with structure and with that guidance that I think I even do better with structure and that guidance and that discipline because it reminds you and it makes you appreciative of why we have those in set because a reckless world, oh my goodness, I wouldn't even want to imagine how reckless the world would be if we didn't, if we literally had no laws, if it was a lawless country or world.
Yeah, at least give them the knowledge. When I talk to students, I always tell them, hey, I'm not here to tell you to say no to drugs. And everyone kind of looks at me, and all the teachers are like, oh, who do we bring in? And obviously, I want people to say no to drugs, but my goal is to empower people to make decisions on their own. If I can educate them on how dangerous drugs are, especially fentanyl, and then when they're in that situation, they can revert back to that the facts, the information, and say, hey, I know this stuff is deadly. I know this stuff isn't for me. Therefore I choose to say no. I mean, because that's ultimately what we want them to do. But just going in and saying, say no, say no, they why they need to know the information. And I think
Yeah.
that's the part that we're missing in so much, especially a lot of families, a lot of parents, unfortunately, just have their head in this, out of sight, out of mind. And, if we don't talk about this, then it will happen. Well, guess what? Someone's going to talk to them, whether it's their goofy friends or whether it's social media or whether it's the drug trafficker. Someone's going to have this conversation. So why not it be the parent, the responsible?
Exactly.
That's where
That's
it
the
needs to
first
start.
that's the first understanding where children start to comprehend things and put pieces to the puzzle
Yeah.
before they go out into the world. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Because they're like,
Yeah.
okay, if my mom said it or my dad said it, my uncle said it, my grandpa said it, or whoever said it in the family, like, oh, it was there. Like, I wasn't supposed to do something with this. What was I not supposed to do? And it's like a little like light bulb. So I absolutely agree with what you said that, you're not here to tell you don't do drugs because, hey, you might need a certain drug later on. So it's not all drug. Like we don't know your situation, but you got to be smart. Think about it. You know what I mean? Let's start having critical thinking. If our
Oh,
young youth can start thinking critically and start being just taking that moment to just pause. That power of pause is so real because if a youth can start recognizing their power in their pause versus their power in their impulsiveness, they will realize they have more power in their pause than in their impulsiveness. But
I-
they don't realize that right now. So they're being impulsive because that's where they feel they have the most power and they're rebelling. So it's interesting to think about this in that manner. It really is.
you just made another quote there. It's the power and the pause, not, there's some there. You
Not
you
the
can
power and the
put your name on
impulsiveness.
that.
I know, right? Write this down later. That's interesting. Oh my goodness, that's funny. So I have to ask you, if you could have any superpower in this world, what would
Oh.
be your superpower of choice?
Oh my goodness, this is a hard one here.
I know.
Just make people kind.
Make people kind.
Make
Would it
people.
be like a wand or would it be like a blink or would it be like you have to tap somebody to make them kind?
I'm
How
older, so
how how would you have that power?
maybe like a nod, like the I Dream of Jeannie, when she
I
the
like
old
when she does that thing and then
little bit
blinks
of
her
that
eye and
nod
blinks her
there.
eyes.
Someone makes the right decision when I do that. So
Mm,
for that right decision, it leads towards kindness to either themselves or to others.
there you go. I like that. That's a different one because people don't think about the power of kindness, man. The power of kindness can truly change people's lives.
Make the
It
world better, right?
Yeah, exactly. Once you work on yourself, it has a ripple effect on everybody else. Like, come on, who knew an officer for 25 years in law enforcement would decide to advocate against drugs versus being like, they'll figure it out themselves, or oh, the world is doomed as others have done. You're like, no, my voice matters, and I can make a change by your voice. So I applaud you for stepping out and doing something out of the normal or out of your comfort zone and talking to me and all these other people that you talk to in this world. But I appreciate that because we need more advocates like yourself who are trying to, speak light on something that people are just avoiding in general. Like there's a light side to it, and the light side is deciding not to do it. You know what I mean? The light side is acknowledging that it's there, but you have the choice, the power in your choice to just not do that. And I think people don't acknowledge the power in their choice as much as they need to. You know what I mean? Especially the youth. You have so much power in your choices and in your thought process. It's just like acknowledge it. Just acknowledge it.
I
So
agree. I agree.
To I guess to start wrapping up the show because time is catching up to us, what can be some lasting words that you can leave us off with to keep on thinking? Even though you really already gave us a lot, what can be some lasting words?
I'd probably reiterate to especially to the parents listening, to have these conversations, even the tough conversations, and this needs to go beyond just the drugs, I mean, the sex, just you name it.
Yeah.
A lot of pressures, social media, a lot of pressures on our youth today that are a lot different than they were when we were young, and have those, just be a parent, have those conversations. There's a lot of resources that online. DEA puts a lot of stuff out. There's a lot of trusted resources out there that if you're not sure or where to obtain that information, find it, learn it, and educate the people you love about it. I think that would be my big takeaway is just continue this conversation, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Continue
this
the
is this
conversation.
is a drug that, like I said, after a long time in law enforcement, I've never seen a drug more impactful. I mean, the drug landscape, casual drug use, drug experimentation, everything has changed.
Yeah.
I didn't give you all the statistics, and I don't want to bore you, but one thing I'll say is over 100,000 people every single year in this country to drugs, and the majority of those people are because of fentanyl. And so we need to raise awareness. So thank you for having me on your show and allowing me to do that. And hopefully someone hears this and has that conversation with their loved ones and makes a difference in that life. And then that's a plus for all of us.
Exactly. It is a plus for all of us. And then all of us is winning because one person decided to take that initiative and talk about it instead of being silent,
Yeah.
because if you speak to that child, maybe that child will speak to their friend who their parents don't talk to. You don't know. You don't know. So just putting that out there and just making that initiative, you're already doing miles of difference and changes that will have a ripple effect. So we just need to remember that as adults, we also have that power as well. So man, goodness, Brian, I feel like we could talk about life and just so many different topics. I'm gonna have to figure out a different excuse to bring you back on my show. But that's what we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. If you would like to know more about Brian and what he has to offer to help the world, go check him out on my website. I have his photo just right there. Just click right under it, and you have all the access that Brian is offering to the world to help people think about this in a whole different light so that we can really think about this. So, with that being said, always, always, always keep thinking, y'all. Bye.